Thank you very much, Chairman. Ms. Sullivan, welcome, and thank you for your work at the department in this area. I'd like to talk in my time a little bit about campus sexual assault and domestic violence. A little bit like you, I have been in the law enforcement field for a while and have actually witnessed the transformation in police response to domestic violence cases, which used to be, frankly, pretty grim. But it's now much more alert, aware, attentive, trauma-informed, and successful. And the result is that around the country, domestic violence groups like Day One in Rhode Island and others work very closely with police departments to make sure that evidence is preserved, to make sure that the witnesses are getting their best opportunities to tell their story, and to make sure that the police are involved early and in a respectful way so that you're not losing evidence and other opportunities to ultimately make a successful case against the offender. So that, I think, has been a huge law enforcement success story, and it's built, I think, in many places, terrific relationships. Then you get onto college campuses. And what I hear often, it's, to put it charitably, I would say a mixed bag of responses. But what I hear often is that the administrative response by the university forestalls the arrival of the law enforcement presence. And the result is that in the time that the early stages are being undertaken of the Title IX process, the prospect of physical evidence or electronic evidence being lost increases, lost or destroyed. The victim, the survivor, puts themselves in the position of having to face some rather difficult cross-examination of, if this is so serious, why didn't you call the police? And so forth. And a lot of that, I think, stands on C, or in some cases he, actually remains in significant control. So that's a problem that I think we still face with respect to campus sexual assault. We've been looking at trying to get a higher education reauthorization bill passed through the HELP committee, but that's been slow in coming, and that provided one forum for considering this issue. But the Judiciary Committee is another place to consider this issue, and I wanted to ask you for your thoughts, because the domestic violence model is such a useful one at bridging the suspicion and the divide between victim community and law enforcement, what role you think you should have and whether you should expand it in trying to bridge that same gap now on America's campuses.
Well, as you know, we do have
Is your mic on?
we do have campus grant programs. So we do provide services specifically. That's one of the discretionary grant programs that we have. I am so excited to hear all of your proposals, honestly, and to start and to see how creatively and much all of you are thinking about VAWA. As far as saying what might be needed going forward, of course, at this time we can't wait to talk about proposals.
Do you agree with me that the domestic violence law enforcement and victim advocacy model and the progress that has been made in that space has been really terrific and provides a model for other places at building a better and more cooperative law enforcement relationship?
What I absolutely can say is it's important to look at best practices and be implementing them in appropriate ways where they can work. I agree with that.
And is it your observation that in some cases on college campuses they have been less successful than in the larger domestic violence community at bridging those suspicions between the victim community and law enforcement?
I don't have the personal experience with college campuses and how things go to be able to speculate. But again, I really am looking forward to hearing.
Well, if you're interested in working on that, we're interested in working on that. My time is up, and we'll follow up offline. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, all of you, and thank you for your service and your testimony. I appreciate it very much. You were here, I think, for my questions to Ms. Sullivan, and I wanted to follow up with you on that issue of if you assume that law enforcement is properly trained, trauma-informed, and is operating at the best practices level, when is the best time to first engage law enforcement after an incident of sexual assault or domestic violence is reported? Ms. Pryor.
I think sooner rather than later. I think that assuming that they are trauma-informed, having that interaction soon is going to be helpful for the victim. Obviously, she is allowed to have a counselor with her, a support group or network around her, but I think that the first interaction with law enforcement is going to make or break that victim's ability to feel comfortable going into the system. And that's why trauma-informed care for first responders is so crucial. That one moment in time, that spotlight into the moment, is going to make or break her ability to say, I'm in or I'm not. And that is just such a crucial intersection of time. So I think sooner rather than later, it helps put a law enforcement piece on this, that she's not alone, that the professionals are treating this seriously, that we work together in a collaborative way to make sure that she is wrapped around with services. And the minute the law enforcement officer intersects with her, it should be a moment where a momentum is going to start, a momentum of safety and a momentum of trust.
And do you agree that, actually, I shouldn't even ask you this because you describe it in your testimony, you have been witness to the transformation in law enforcement practice with respect to domestic violence cases, and that has been of enormous value to victims, correct?
Yes, we used to say to a victim of domestic violence, here's a criminal complaint. Do you want me to prosecute your abuser? The answer is always wholeheartedly no. But if I ask it a different way and I say, do you want us to stop the violence? The answer is always a yes.
Yeah.
And so we used to say to a victim, do you want to prosecute? No, rip up the paper and have a nice day.
So my concern is that when incidents take place on a campus, very often the Title IX process kicks in, and that delays the intervention of law enforcement. What are some of the problems that you've experienced as a prosecutor when law enforcement doesn't quickly get engaged in the aftermath of an assault like this? What are some of the unfortunate consequences of that delay for the prosecutor and the victim down the road?
Parallel investigations. So parallel investigations happen, and people, quite frankly, they're circling the wagons. Wait a minute, I've got liability, I've got other policies I need to follow, I've got other issues. There could be multiple agencies having interviewed the same person. Why not get together and have the stakeholders talk to each other? I think if everyone took a step back and looked at it from a 30,000-foot view perspective, we would say that the best thing to do is come together as a unit and figure out what's best for this victim. And if they talk to each other...
Is there a risk of either electronic or physical evidence being lost or compromised during the delay before someone who has the ability to seize that evidence gets involved?
Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest challenges law enforcement faces.
And is there potential cross-examination hazard for the victim that opens up when a prompt police report isn't filed, or when the victim is subjected to examination by defense counsel in the Title IX process before the prosecutor is involved?
Yes, there's inconsistent statements that then can be brought in, and that to me just re-traumatizes a victim.
So, all other things being equal, getting the law enforcement team engaged with the victim rapidly, if not immediately, is a value worth pursuing.
It absolutely is, and that starts with relationships.
And making sure that that law enforcement support is properly trauma-informed and follows the proven discipline of the domestic violence prosecutions is necessary to make it successful.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think we're all in agreement on that. Ms. Dyer, you've been nodding. Do you have anything to add?
No, I completely completely agree, and I do believe that...
I'm sorry, your mic needs to be on.
I completely agree, and I do think that the domestic violence field really did kind of pave the way for creating these coordinated community responses and kind of dragging people to the table initially and then everybody staying voluntarily after. And I do think it serves as a best practice for similar situations such as sexual assault on campus, trafficking. I think it serves as a really good model.
Well said. Thank you.